if you don't have a view on how AI connects us to crypto and you're locked in this world, this ancient world where people will say, Niall Ferguson said that interest expense, have you heard this one?
Yes.
When interest expense crosses defense. You know what I've never said on this show or to anyone who will listen? Here's a new data point for everyone. Do you know that all those times in history, you know what there wasn't? Entitlements. So we're talking about nominal dollars comparing two things. In a world of AI where maybe people will live forever, that doesn't mean anything. So you can't take historical wars, historical relationships, and then put them in the context of a world of AI. So Tesla comes out and reports earnings. And as usual, everyone goes, oh, here we go. This is the big number. And you have 90% of the people that hate Tesla. And then you have 10% that are cultish. And there's really nobody in between. And I can say that as someone who speaks to both groups. And it's very polarizing. It's like anything else. So I only cared about one thing. It's not a car company. The cars are data centers. They're collecting data. So the reason I bring up stage one of AI, when you leave that LLM world, and for everyone listening, you're at some point going to enter a world where embodied AI, intelligence with inside a machine, is going to be there. And that just means we're getting closer to abundance, because you don't have abundance with replacing knowledge workers. You have to actually replace everyone to get to abundance. So in the report or in the earnings release, they basically said, we're going to have driverless robotaxis in Austin this year. And Polymarket, which has proven to be a really good thing to pay attention to, especially right now for Bitcoin people. It has two things. Number one, it has this now at 99% before the end of the year. So this is, Elon Musk is not trusted in any time frame he gives. And yet the market, betting market said, this is 99%.
Somebody knows something.
Somebody knows something. Robotaxis are just humanoids on wheels. It is the first step, and it is the same brain that will go into Optimus. So with that percentage being up there, when they release it and people start to realize that the cost will be 60% lower than an Uber because we don't have a person in it, and the cost of the cameras is cheaper than LiDAR. So that puts pressure on Uber's business. But you know what else it does? Every city in this country has an inflation problem. They have a living expense problem. Even though this is in Texas and people go, the regulations will never allow it to happen in New York. You know what will want it in New York? The people that want to have cheaper rides. And this is the way FOMO will happen with abundance, is even if the regulators are against it. But the reason this gets important is if you start rolling stuff back and you start bringing out embodied intelligence, starting with this, it's going to be rolled out to trucks. All of a sudden, the shipping costs are going to start to come down. It is very difficult to then look and go, well, how long will it take for Optimus? Well, there's a shareholder meeting for Tesla coming up on November 6th, and on the front page is an Optimus. He also said in there, we will be unveiling Optimus in Q1 of next year. All that really matters is the robotaxi brain is the Optimus brain, and that's what people have to understand. This whole thing with Waymo, I was talking to someone about this week, and they're like, well, what's the difference between the two? I'm like, can you spot a Waymo on the road with the gigantic thing on top that looks like an archaic piece of equipment? A Tesla robotaxi, you can't tell. It's just, you can't tell it's a driverless thing. If they had tinted windows, you wouldn't be able to see anything. So if people want to go mess around with the Waymo, it's very easy. You pick it out, you go mess with it. You want to go mess with it. There's so many reasons why this is so important. And I made this statement, and I don't want this to go, because if people are sitting on their seat, what does Jordi mean this is important for Bitcoin? The concept of abundance, whether or not you believe in it, I've said that I've gone forward. The reason I got so interested in Bitcoin is because I believe that AI would disrupt everything and eventually cannibalize capitalism. That's what I believed. Now, it's not a negative thing in the end. It's a very positive thing. In fact, what Elon Musk says is we're not going to have universal basic income. We're going to have universal high income. And the reason is because the employees that are making the money, they don't spend money. So that money gets redistributed in a way. So the profits actually become profit sharing as opposed to wages. And that becomes something that's very easy for governments to distribute, whether or not companies have it or whatever, the robots have it. And so whether or not you believe in that, the robotaxi getting there ends the concept of scarcity. And with no scarcity, you have to go to the place where there is scarcity. So leverage goes down in abundance. Time collapses. Those are all the things that the entire fiat system is based on. It's not just based on trust. It's not just, it's based on scarcity, and it's based on time. And all of that is what Bitcoin compresses. So I will say it again and again. I believe this moment where labor really starts to feel the pressure and the foundation of society shakes because people are worried about jobs and they're voting in people to get them there. I do believe that the crypto market is going to be a major, major beneficiary of reducing and being the deflationary force in the financial side and everything else as transactions speed up.
Do you believe that government has ultimate control, or do you believe technology now is the predictor of success? And I think that, to your point, it applies to AI, to Bitcoin, to all these things we're talking about, right?
There are three layers in most organizations due to the hierarchical structure that's existed for a long time. You have leadership. You have the technology layer, which has grown in importance over the course of the last 30 years because of the internet, because of cloud, because of everything. And then underneath that, you have the younger employees. And what has happened with artificial intelligence is very similar to what you're saying about Bitcoin and about governments and the way younger people view this control thing. Leadership at every organization fears losing control, just like a government. The technology layer is the layer that is the party pooper in this. And they go, no, you can't use AI. The data could be stolen, everything could go on. So their job is they're fighting to not be irrelevant because AI coding replaces them in many, many ways. So they don't embrace it. And the employees put pressure on both groups because they're like, hey, my friends are using it down the street. How come I'm not a part of this? That is a microcosm of what's happening in the world. And AI is connected to that with Bitcoin. Everything that you mentioned is exactly the way I see it. And it's funny because we go out to a dinner the night before. I chose all the people at that dinner.
You did.
And the range of ages was still about the same as last night. The difference was at the dinner I put together, it was all people that embrace
optimists.
Yeah.
100% optimists.
And embrace crypto as part. And you're talking about, one of them had been a CEO at 2 major companies, embraces crypto. You don't find many of those people. The reason I like to have conversations like that is because we can talk about the China-US situation. We can talk about Bitcoin. We can talk about tokenization. You can't have that conversation in the dinner last night. And I had to shut down. And I'm very hard to shut down unless I run into a stubborn conversation where it's like, I'm over here, you're over here, nowhere will we meet. All you want to do is be open to the concept of abundance and how it could play out differently, because a probability distribution curve has all of the outcomes that are possible. For people with Bitcoin, it's not even part of the distribution. It's a bubble, just like AI.
Gold seems to have been on this parabolic run. It's supposed to be a stable asset. It has not been stable to the upside, which is good for gold holders. But then there seems to have been a transition, a shift, a regime change, and it fell 8% in 48 hours. I did not see a single headline saying that gold is a bad store of value because it fell 8% in 48 hours, but if it had been Bitcoin, they would have wrote that. What's your read? Is the bull market over, or the gold bug's going to go back to irrelevance for a decade?
Last week, at least the timing on saying that I'd be very scared if I was long gold with the China-US thing coming up.
Nailed it.
I think if there's an agreement, the risk could be fairly big. And that's because the most recent rally, which occurred during from the summertime. So from August to now, gold went up like 1,000 points after a range that traded. For all the Bitcoin people, remember, gold was in a big range, then it broke out and it got lunar very, very quickly. Here's my take on gold. And since we really haven't talked about it. So in 2007, myself and some other people at the fund that I was at, we had a gold dealer that came into the office regularly.
Like a physical gold dealer.
Physical gold dealer. Because I thought the entire banking system was going to go under. And most of that came from my time at Morgan Stanley, but most of that came from before the printing press. Everything changed after I saw what they did with TARP. That changed my entire mindset and believed that at that point, we were entering a different kind of world. But during that time, I bought gold continuously. And what I said last week is, even during the period of 2010 coming out of the crisis to like 2016, gold did nothing. So I said, gold can go long stretches of doing nothing. And the reason it can do nothing is just like Bitcoin, there is no story to it that is a value story. It's just people are buying it. So the debasement trade is not a new trade, but when the banks start talking about it, doing research on it, but most importantly, when retail inflows hit record highs, which is what happened last week, retail's involved because they're attracted to volatility.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as they can make money in something, they'll get on anything. Mm-hmm. And gold does have a limited amount of kind of supply. And you very seldom in life are you going to see macro people that are all bragging about it and retail people that are all bragging about it, while the macro people are saying that retail's in a bubble. And yet they're all participating in gold. So I found this to be kind of unique. So my viewpoint on this is very simple. I believe the China-US thing is the single most important thing for the rest of the year. The Fed rate hike cuts are going to happen. If China and the US come to a trade deal, and I want you to think about last night and the historian that was at the table, he and I had a conversation before. At the presentation I was at, there was a specialist on war that had predicted the last two wars, meaning he predicted the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and he predicted the Iran-Israel situation. And I won't give up what his background is, but he's a very smart guy, and he was in the technology and cyber side, and he gave a really good presentation. What he said was similar to what the historian said, which is the US and China are headed to something right now. And the reason I think this is important is because even in my mind, if I was doing the probabilities of when China should invade Taiwan, US munitions are down significantly. They control rare earth and they just put a ban on it. So we don't have munitions at all right now. And to rebuild them is going to take some time, and we need rare earth to do that. At the same time, this trade war is kind of the reason for them to do anything. So if they can go in there and do something, now would make a lot of sense. And so in the discussion we had was, if you believe in the macro version of capital flows and the anger towards all these countries and that it's a deglobalizing world and blah, 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 and all this stuff, if there was going to be a war, I do agree that in the near term, it should be the case. But there's one other element I want to bring into this, which I said to both of them. The determinant of quantum and the determinant of AGI. I just don't think if you're going to do a war, you don't want to wait until after we reach these like mythical things of the ability of, like I said, I mean, unless I'm missing something on quantum, if people are worried about breaking Bitcoin, wouldn't you be worried that you could break into nuclear arms and have the country shoot them at themselves? Like I think if you get to quantum, everything kind of changes. And I think that would be a great deterrent for doing something. So I'm leaning towards the fact that the macro people that are still happy with the returns this year, despite being wrong on the stock market, despite being wrong on bonds. So they want to be short both of them, and that hasn't worked. Gold or dollar hasn't weakened. So all of the macro trades that were beloved, anti-US exceptionalism, all of that, they're not working anymore. Mm-hmm. The one that has saved them this year is gold. And so what I'd really be worried about if I was running a portfolio where my only trade that was working was gold, and I have retail buddied up next to me in the speculative side, and I have this China-US thing, I think if there's a China-US trade deal, I think gold will continue to go down, and then we'll just take it from there. I think it has had an excessive outsized return, and I also think that would be a positive for Bitcoin.